Okay, man, let's talk about the Hawks. So Nate McMillan is no longer the coach. They gave Quinn Snyder a 5-year deal, and I'm going to imagine some Snyder stuff at the tail end of this, but just to talk about what the Hawks are looking like right now. They're a 500 team right now, and the thing about this team is it's so different night to night. Like some games, their offense is amazing, like their game against the Cavs where DeJounte made like 7 pull-up mid-rangers. Trey had some tough threes, and he also drew a whole bunch of fouls where sometimes just bringing the ball up court, no screen, just taking like Darius Garland off the dribble, and then before you know it, it's a million free throw attempts. But then they would have the game like right before the All-Star break against the Knicks where those same tough threes that Trey likes to attempt, the pull-ups and the step-backs, suddenly they're not going in. DeJounte was also kind of ended up being like a little more of a spot-up guy in that Knicks game, and he was like over 4 from 3, and but another thing in that Knicks game too was like DeJounte missed a bunch of shots at the rim, and looking at a couple of them, like the spacing isn't always ideal because you got Collins who kind of wants to mess around at the paint sometimes, and Capella's around there too. And look, sometimes it's lob city for Capella or a Kongwu or Collins, and other times the spacing's just a little awkward. And early in the season, the big thing with these guys was between Trey and DeJounte running a million pick and rolls, and the tendency for those guys to shoot pull-up jumpers on top of the fact that they did not keep Kevin Huerter and Bogdanovich was hurt. Their offense was like so against the math that it was just like, you guys are not giving yourselves the best chance of winning at all. And within that, look, you'd still got your like Trey Young going off games and all that. Bogdanovich came back. The offense has been better recently, even if there are still these weird games where basically if Trey and DeJounte don't play well, it's just kind of tough for them to make up for that because they just need more shooting. I think another thing is still that John Collins' place in the team. It is what it is, man. Like, you go down his game logs, and some nights he's just getting like 6 shot attempts. But still, their offense has been better over the last like 10 to 15 games, even if it is still like pretty straightforward with Trey DeJounte pick and rolls and all that. And for what it's worth, Sadiq Bey so far, it's only been like 5 games, but he's been shooting pretty okay from 3. He's already had a couple games with like 8 3-point attempts, which I think they definitely need. But to get to the defense a little bit here. So, in terms of the scheme, look, Clint Capella and Okongwu switch more often than your average center. They don't switch every single time. I mean, they definitely sprinkle in their drops and all that. But still, that's the baseline. You have DeJounte and DeAndre guarding the better perimeter players on the opposing team, so Trey doesn't have to. And then Trey, through hedging and just whatever he's got to do to not be the guy getting attacked. And I mean, listen, their last game against the Wizards, Beal was able to get the switch on Trey more than a couple times, and he was able to convert on those, but it wasn't just Trey. I mean, he also was scoring over DeJounte. Like, one of the biggest shots was just a deep 2-pointer over DeJounte with like 30 seconds left, I believe it was. And then he had this like crazy bank shot thing over DeJounte as well. Kuzma also beat Clint Capella on some switches in that one, which, some of those were like tough threes in his face, which I guess if you're Atlanta, you'll say, yeah, that's not going to go in all the time. There was also that Hornets game where they allowed 144 points. LaMelo just beating basically anybody who wants to switch on him, or Bogdanovich biting on at least 2 pump fakes that I remember, which led to like Gordon Hayward getting a drive inside. The Hornets also got them a couple times where like you could tell the Hawks were going to switch, and so it would be like PJ Washington screening for LaMelo and then getting a roll to the rim because now DeJounte has switched onto him, but he's kind of like behind him, that sort of thing. Another one of their not so great defensive games, which was like a month ago now because we had an All-Star break, was against the Pelicans where, I mean, if you want to look at Brandon Ingram's buckets in that game, I mean, if you've seen Ingram drop 30 before, you know what it looks like. It's him trying to cook and get within the 3-point line and all that. And it's like, look, Capella will be there on the switch, and maybe Ingram will make something tough, or DeAndre Hunter might be there to meet him for like a pull-up jumper around the elbow or whatever. Like, made shots are going to happen, of course. But I guess what I find myself asking with this Hawks defense is like, do they need to bring more help? Like, I don't want you to just bring random double teams, because then you're just going to invite yourself to give up shots at the rim and corner threes all day. But I just feel like there's too many instances of really good players against this team just kind of getting whatever they want, even if the defense isn't really bad, but it's not really that awesome either. Which is kind of weird because throughout their fighting the math too much offense in the beginning of the year, their defense was pretty good. And as we stand today for the season, they're 11th in offense and 22nd in defense. And they just hired a really good coach. So you know what? Things could be worse. And for what it's worth, I mean, their lineup numbers will tell you that their starting 5 is fine. It's when they start going to the bench and all that. By the way, shout out to AJ Griffin, who has one of my favorite jump shot forms in the league right now. The thing though, man, is because they're just so up and down, I don't know if that means I should care more or less about their starting lineup net rating. I don't know. I might be dumb for that. Anyway, what's Quin Snyder going to do? Of course, with the Jazz, by the end of it, it was Gobert drop coverage and a whole lot of pick and roll and use Rudy's dives to the rim in order to get, guys a bunch of three-point attempts. This Atlanta team does not have as many three-point shooters as that Jazz team did. Clint Capella is good defensively, no doubt. He's not what Gobert was for the Jazz for all those years. Will we see Trae Young moving more off ball? I mean, for what it's worth, in the one game sample size we have, there was a play there where I think Capella had it up top, and then Trae got a down screen, and then he was coming up to the top, and then Capella handed off to him, and then it basically still became a Capella-Trae Young pick and roll. But there was a little something extra there, okay, maybe. The biggest thing, man, is I think you're going to see more motion on offense. Yeah, everybody wants to imagine Trae Young suddenly becoming Reggie Miller, and I don't know where he's going to get to with his just playing off ball like crazy stuff. But also, I hope that Snyder could find more creative screens for John Collins to set. Obviously, there's the on-ball stuff, but also you could have him screen for guys off ball, which could potentially lead to him getting a cut to the basket or whatever. And I think defensively, you're just going to see more creativity. Because again, when I watch the Hawks play defense now, a lot of the time I feel like we switch and then, okay, let's try to hold up well. Now, before you say, well, what about the Jazz playoff exits and all that stuff with Quin Snyder? Hey, listen, man. You think the Hawks wouldn't want to win 60 games and make round two? You got to get there first. And also, he was by far the best candidate. I feel like the conversation around this team too often becomes it's Trae Young's fault. And yeah, don't get me wrong, Trae is not perfect. Between sometimes you don't love the difficult threes that he attempts, and there was something there between him and McMillan and whatever that relationship was. But I also think this roster needs more shooting, and I think they need some sort of changes to their defensive game plan. And it's not as if Nate McMillan's offense was the Warriors' motion offense. We'll just put it like that.